Hey YouTube, Untamed here. So many of you have likely seen the CNBC article highlighting how both Ford and GM saw record sales volume in 2024. Record sales since 2019, pre-pandemic numbers. This must mean that we're not heading toward a car market crash in 2025, right? Wrong. In today's video, I'm going to peel back the layers of the onion and really explain to you why those sales figures that were provided by both Ford and GM are really an inaccurate depiction of where the company is at. Let's just say desperate times call for desperate measures, and I'm going to explain why in this video, so stick with me. So for starters, why would both Ford, GM, or any vehicle manufacturer want to paint themselves in a really good light, a much better light than what they really are? That's to appease their shareholders. If their shareholders begin to think that the company is tanking or spiraling downward at all, that is when they begin to dump their stock, right? They begin to peel off, and that is when we begin to see the ripple effects, adverse ripple effects throughout a company. So they want to keep their shareholders happy. Let me put it this way, if my donut shop baked 250,000 more donuts compared to last year, would you expect my donut sales to be up this year? The answer is yes. We talked about it before, but we currently have 3 million brand new vehicles available within the US right now. That is up over 120% comparatively to 2.5 years ago. Let that sink in. Not only are those numbers staggering in and of itself, that growth rate is unprecedented. You know, auto manufacturers are always quick to highlight their sales volume and their sales figures, but what they're not quick to highlight is that compared to their production numbers. We saw 7% roughly increase in production across the board, yet we only saw a 4% growth rate in their sales volume. 7% more vehicles were made, 4% growth in sales. In addition to that, we saw nearly 16% more vehicles available in 2024 compared to what we had in 2023. That's many thanks to the carryover units, the unsold 2023 models that were still sitting on dealership lots at the beginning of 2024. That's a factor to consider here. If you're like me, you might find it confusing because when you go to your local dealerships, they're completely covered with inventory, right? They're stacked. Their secondary and third lots are actually full of inventory. How did we see an increase in sales in 2024 compared to 2023 when there was a lot less inventory on dealership lots? That tends to happen when you produce more vehicles. You produce more, you're likely going to sell more. I often think of the Toyota Tacoma, right? They often brag about the Tacoma being the best mid-size selling pickup truck, but it feels like a weird flex when the nearest competitor to you produces 200,000 less vehicles compared to the Tacoma. So it's a weird thing to brag about. If you throw a bowl of spaghetti at a dartboard, you're bound to hit the bullseye. So in 2024, we saw just under 16 million new vehicles sell within the US, compared to about 17 million in 2019. So since then, this is the largest year that we've seen of vehicle sales volume at large. To put it into context for you though, in fourth quarter, 2024, we saw 34% of the sales take place. You know, it's not too uncommon for the fourth quarter of a year to see larger sales figures, but generally speaking, we see about 26 to 28% of the annual sales take place in that fourth quarter. Same goes for the first quarter, largely thanks to like tax season, right? We see more sales first quarter and fourth quarter in any given year. But this year, 34% of the sales took place in fourth quarter. What does that say? It says dealerships are getting pretty desperate. They saw those inventory levels spiking. Dealers were actually turning away allocations or turning away deliveries because they couldn't move that inventory. They were slashing prices, $8,000 to $12,000 off of many pickup trucks. You know, vehicles that aren't commonly discounted were being discounted in 2024 here, end of 2024. So 34% of the sales, over a third of the annual sales took place in the last few months. Kind of crazy. You know, many Ford dealerships were actually losing money month to month. They weren't generating any profit yield, and that is pretty unprecedented throughout the year. But that is a large reason why we saw so many sales happen, because they got desperate. Many of them were slashing prices to invoice or even sub-invoice and offering incentivized interest rates. We're talking 1.9% over 72 months, or even sometimes 0% over 60 months, depending on the vehicle. I mean, you tell me, is it still worth bragging about those sales figures, even though they were pretty much giving them away without a profit margin? GM led the country in automotive sales here in 2024, followed by Toyota, then Ford, then Hyundai, then Honda. The F-150 saw its 48th consecutive year as America's #1 selling pickup truck. But again, it kind of goes back to what I just mentioned about the Toyota Tacoma. If you produce a lot more than the competition, I mean, it only makes sense that you're going to sell more, right? So both Ford and GM reported their largest sales volume since 2019. Ford saw a 4.2% growth rate in sales year over year. They sold 2,080,000 units roughly here within the U.S. in 2024, whereas just last year in 2023 they sold about 2 million units. For GM in particular, they saw a 4.3% growth rate year over year, selling 2.7 million units here in 2024. Their sales figures back in 2019, for GM, they sold about 2.9 million units. And for Ford, 2.4, just over 2.4 million units were sold in 2019. So that's kind of their benchmark for now. And you remember my point about how we saw about 34% of all vehicle sales taking place in fourth quarter here in 2024? Well, for Ford in particular, they saw an 8.8% growth rate year over year for their fourth quarter sales. I mean, nothing really screams fire sale quite like that. They sold over 530,000 units just at the end of the year. Both Ford and GM really attest their increase in sales volume thanks to their EV and hybrid sales. Ford only saw a 0.2% growth rate in their combustion engine sales in 2024 year over year, whereas they saw a 38.3% increase in their EV segment. But that stat in and of itself is quite telling. People don't love the EVs coming out right now from Ford in particular, the Mustang Mach-E, the Ford F-150 Lightning. People are not flocking to buy them. The only reason why they are selling is because Ford is essentially giving them away. Actually, I'm pretty close with my local general manager here at the Ford dealership. They will be the first to tell you that they don't make hardly any money when they sell those vehicles. It's really with the combination of the huge incentivized interest rates offered by Ford, combined with government subsidies, tax credits, green credits, all these additional credits being offered to the consumer, makes it so the dealership doesn't make hardly any money. They're essentially giving these things away just to move the metal. So again, it feels a little strange beating our chest bragging about sales volume when the only reason why we did see an increase at all is due to the fact that we essentially gave away vehicles with zero profit margin involved. That feels a little weird. Every single EV at my local GM and Chevy and Ford dealership right now is coming with a 0% interest over 60 months. And when you combine that with the government subsidies, tax credits, and huge discounts on them, well, it begins to make sense that we saw such a huge increase in the sales. Ford's EV and hybrid segment combined accounted for about 13.7% of their annual sales in 2024. I like to talk about Toyota a lot too, so I'm going to throw in a fact for them. They did see a 3.7% increase in their sales volume in 2024 comparatively to 2023. That is despite seeing a 7.1% drop in their sales in December. I can tell you the large reason for their success at all is thanks to their subcompact SUV segment, right? The Toyota RAV4. When you combine that with the Toyota Camry, Toyota Prius, those are all selling well. The Toyota Tundra, Toyota Tacoma, well, people are not flocking out to buy those, which is why we're seeing Toyota discount them hugely, right? With the Toyota Tacoma in particular, we see a $6,000 to $8,000 discount across the board, with the exception of the Trail Hunter and TRD Pro, of course, but I am still seeing them come with a $4,000 discount anyway. The Tundra, $8,000 to $12,000 off, is becoming commonplace for the higher trimmed models. People are just not wildly excited about the twin-turbo V6 in the Tundra and the 2.4-liter four-cylinder, turbocharged four-cylinder Tacoma. People who buy these trucks generally, they want to buy them for reliability, simplicity, and affordability. All three of those things of which have gone out the window. With all this talk of EVs, I feel like I need to mention Tesla. Tesla has been doing very well, and they have been doing extremely well since 2011. In fact, they have seen a constant year-over-year growth in sales since that time. This last year was the first year since 2011 that they saw a dip in their sales. It wasn't huge, but it was a 1.1% drop in sales volume, which isn't too surprising based on what I just told you, right? GM, Ford, they're pushing their EVs out the door with zero profit margin. So it's not too much of a surprise that we saw a little bit of an adverse effect on Tesla. I want you to ask yourself, if the automotive industry is doing so well right now, why are we seeing so many automotive giants, to include Ford and GM, laying off thousands of employees collectively and lessening production by so much? If the automotive industry is doing so well, why are we seeing Nissan needing to merge with Honda as a final last resort to save the company? If the automotive industry is doing so well, why are we seeing automotive giants like Stellantis see their worst year since 2010? They only sold 1.3 million new vehicles in 2024. That was a 15% decline over 2023. Why are we seeing so many of these larger automotive giants experience huge share market loss? We're talking 30 to 50% loss since the beginning of January 2024. So all that to say, any company can fabricate a headline to make it look as though the company or the automotive manufacturer is in a much better place than what they truly are. Like this one, for example, they saw a 7% increase in the production volume, but only a 4.2% increase in sales volume. So they made a lot more than what they actually sold more of compared to year over year. And when you combine that with the fact that there was 16% more vehicles available compared to 2023, well, they should have done even better than what they're reporting right now. But let's face it, the unfortunate truth is us Americans, we generally look at the headlines and, well, we take that for fact. We take that for face value, and, well, there's a lot more to the story. But we never really give it the additional time or credence to dig into it and do some more research. We just take it as, oh, hey, GM and Ford, they're crushing it right now. Not really. Alright guys, I'll wrap up the video there. As always, I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to tune into these videos. I really enjoy it. And I really enjoy sharing this passion with you guys because I want you to be informed consumers. When you go buy your next vehicle, I want you to have a level of confidence when you go make that purchase. I talk through this stuff because it truly is a passion of mine. I mention it a few times and perhaps too much, but I do it on purpose because I know the majority of my viewers are new to the channel. They're new viewers. They haven't been here before. Obviously, the subscribers, you guys have heard me before, but I do have a PhD in industrial and organizational psychology. I love this stuff. I could geek out about it all day long, and that's why I do it. And I hope some of you really appreciate it. So as always, if you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing. Your support means a lot, and it certainly doesn't go unnoticed. Until next time.